Hello students and welcome to Scholar, your one-stop solution to UPSC preparation. I am Shubhangi Sharma, your faculty for history. And students, today we are going to take a very important session. It is pertaining to the French Revolution. We are going to analyze this topic particularly from the mains perspective as we get a lot of questions from the same in our mains examination. All right, so let's begin students. Let me share my screen with you guys. All right. So as I've just told you, today we are going to take up the French Revolution. We are not going into the very intricate details. However, I have taken a comprehensive review of this particular topic. Now, why I have chosen the French Revolution, students, is because it is very important from your GS1 mains papers perspective, and it forms a part of the world history. All right. Now, why it is important? Because in 2019 means itself, we had got one question from the French Revolution, wherein we were asked that how the foundation of the modern world was laid by the American and French revolutions. So typically students, herein we had to answer that what was the impact of American and French revolution on the world history and how it had helped in shaping the modern world. Sufficing that, students, you will be able to realize that the French Revolution is important from mains perspective, and that is why we are going to do a detailed discussion on the same. Now, students, in this particular lecture, we are going to be tackling three important aspects pertaining to the French Revolution. That is, number one, what were the reasons behind the French Revolution? What were the events that led to the rise of French Revolution? Next, students, we are of course going to talk about the entire course of the French Revolution. What were the events that were happening during the French Revolution? Finally, students, we are going to talk about the impact or the consequences that happened due to the French Revolution. So these are the three topics that sum up the entire French Revolution, and we are going to discuss about them one by one. चलिए start करते हैं. Now, students, as I have told you, the first important topic that we need to understand when we are talking about the French Revolution is what were the reasons that led to the French Revolution in first place. Now, in order to understand that, students, you need to understand the social setup of France in that particular time period. Having said that, students, the society of France during the 18th century was as such that it was divided into three estates. Now, estates typically refers to three types of classes. All right. Now, what were these three estates? The first one were the clergy. Clergy basically corresponds to the people of the church, the authorities who were functioning as a part of church. All right. The second estate comprised of the nobility, and they were very important people as they had held important official positions in the government services, in the army, etc. So basically, they were the people who were directly serving the monarch and were in important administrative positions. Now, students, comes the lowest category or the third estate. And herein, you need to note that these people formed the majority of the population. That is, most of the, at least 80% of the population of France was comprised as a part of the third estate. Now, who were these people? The third estate comprised of people such as the middle class people, the artisans, the city workers, and the peasants. तो स्टूडेंट्स, जैसा कि मैंने आपको अभी समझाया, इस पर्टिकुलर स्लाइड में हम ये समझ रहे हैं कि फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन होने के कारण क्या रहे. उन कारणों को समझने के लिए सबसे पहले हमें फ्रांस का सोशल सेटअप देखना पड़ेगा, जो कि तीन एस्टेट्स के अंदर डिवाइडेड है, यानी कि क्लर्जी या चर्च से एसोसिएटेड लोग, नोबल्स जो कि इंपॉर्टेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव पोजीशंस को होल्ड करते थे, एंड देन देयर वाज द लास्ट कैटेगरी दैट इज द थर्ड एस्टेट, जिसके अंदर गरीब लोग, आर्टिजन्स, प्रोफेशनल्स, मिडिल क्लास के लोग, ये सभी आया करते थे. इसकी एक इंपॉर्टेंट फ्लो चार्ट आपके सामने यहां भी दी हुई है. आप इसको डायरेक्टली अपने मेंस के आंसर में यूज कर सकते हैं. इट विल लुक वेरी विजुअली अपीजिंग. ऑलराइट. Now, students, I want to tell you that there were certain problems due to this particular division of the three estates. Before that, I would like to tell you that who all people were associated or were a part of the third estate. Now, the peasants, as I've told you, formed 80% of the population. And within these peasants, there were further subdivisions in forms of landowner peasants, tenants, and landless laborers. तो जो peasants थे वो सारे ही थर्ड एस्टेट का पार्ट थे, लेकिन इनके अंदर भी फर्दर डिविजन्स थे, जिसमें कुछ peasants के पास लैंड थी और किसी किसी के पास नहीं थी, तो वो और भी ज्यादा पुअर कंडीशंस में रह रहे थे. Apart from the students, the middle classes, as I've already told you, included the educated people, such as the doctors, civil servants, rich people like merchants, etc. However, it will be important to note that despite being rich, these people enjoyed a very little social prestige and the rights in the society. तो अगर आप देखेंगे तो जितने भी सोशल पॉलिटिकल राइट्स हैं वो सारे फर्स्ट और सेकंड एस्टेट यानी कि क्लर्जी और नोबिलिटी के हाथ में थे सारे, और थर्ड एस्टेट के हाथ में कुछ भी इंपॉर्टेंट राइट्स नहीं थे. इसको समझने के लिए हमें दो पॉइंट्स को जरूर याद रखना होगा. These 2 points, students, include that the third estate first of all did not have any voting rights in the legislative assembly. So whatever measures were taken by the monarch, under that the third estate had no say whatsoever because they did not have voting rights. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that only the third estate was eligible for paying taxes. Now, what does this mean? It means that the first estate and the second estate, that is the clergy and the nobles, did not have to pay any sort of tax, and they were just accumulating their wealth over the time, whereas the entire burden of running the entire country was in the hands of the third estate, as they were the sole taxpayers. Now, students, this was the biggest reason why they were not happy with the social setup of France at that particular point of time, which later became a reason for the French Revolution. Now, students, as I had told you that the third estate was eligible for paying the entire taxes. Under that, you need to remember two important terms, that is tithe and taille, which were two types of taxes that were prevalent during the time of French Revolution. Okay, the meanings are also presented on the screen. Now, students, before moving to the second slide, I would like to tell you that this particular chapter has been beautifully covered in your 9th standards NCERT, and we as Scholar team have also taken up this particular chapter in our NCERT course. Gaurav sir has explained this chapter in a very comprehensive manner. So please visit our app and subscribe to the NCERT course for a better understanding. Now, students, let's move on to the next slide. Now we are going to talk about the second reason which caused discontentment among the local population. So the first one was that there were certain divisions in the society because of which the third estate particularly was not very happy. All right. Apart from this, the second important reason was that the local population was very discontent or unhappy with the ruling monarch, that is King Louis XVI. Now, King Louis XVI was very well known for his extravagant lifestyle, and in fact, his wife, that is Marie Antoinette, was herself not liked by the local people of France, and this was one of the major reasons why the local people, particularly the Third Estate, were unhappy with the rule of King Louis XVI. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that there was a reckless financial distribution under the reign of King Louis XVI, because of which, again, the Third Estate people were unhappy, as they were the ones who had to bear the burden of all the taxes. Now, under that, students, it will be important to note that under the reign of King Louis XVI, France was facing a lot of financial trouble, particularly due to events such as the 7-Year War, which was a war of global supremacy between Britain and France. Apart from the students, you must also know that King Louis XVI had helped the Americans against the Britishers during the American Revolution, because of which there was financial bankruptcy in France. तो जो दो कारण रहे जिनकी वजह से ज्यादा फाइनेंशियल बैंक्रप्सी फ्रांस में हो रही थी, वो थे 7-Year War और अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन में फ्रांस का पार्टिसिपेशन, जिसकी वजह से फ्रांस की जो ट्रेजरी थी वो धीरे धीरे खत्म हो रही थी, और उसका जो टैक्स बर्डन था वो थर्ड एस्टेट के ऊपर दोबारा आ रहा था, एंड इसीलिए वो जो थर्ड एस्टेट के लोग थे, दे डिड नॉट लाइक द रूल ऑफ किंग लुई XVI. All right. Apart from the students, one important idea that I would like to point out here is the idea of conflicted ideals. Now, this is such of an irony wherein the ruler of France is supporting the Americans in achieving the ideals of liberty, equality, and self-rule, whereas in his own country, people were not allowed to gain the same kind of rights. And that is why such kind of ideas irked the third estate, and that is why they rose into rebellion, which ultimately became the French Revolution. तो हम अभी तक दो कारण समझ चुके हैं, एक तो ये था कि थर्ड एस्टेट के ऊपर सारा टैक्स का बर्डन था, और दूसरी प्रॉब्लम ये थी कि किंग लुई 16 की जो पॉलिसीज थी वो थर्ड एस्टेट के ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा फाइनेंशियल बर्डन बना रही थी, जिसकी वजह से वो लोग बहुत ज्यादा अनहैप्पी थे. Apart from the students, there was another important reason that led to the starting of the French Revolution, and that is pertaining to the intellectual influence, particularly the Enlightenment ideas. Enlightenment students was basically a phenomena wherein a lot of ideas had developed at a particular point of time, which were more scientific and rational in nature. Now, before that, the church used to tell the local population that as a human, your life must be filled with burdens, and the church used to kind of compare the life of Jesus Christ with the local population and tell them that whenever you're given a human life, it should be a path of suffering. However, during the time of enlightenment, new ideas emerged in the society which highlighted the idea of rationalism, that is, every human is born with certain rights and they have a right to live in a condition which is self-sufficient and not very demeaning. All right. And that is why they particularly challenged the authority of the church. Now, there were certain Enlightenment thinkers who had emerged in this particular time period, such as Montesquieu, Rousseau, Locke, Voltaire, etc. And these were the people who had provided the intellectual thrust during the French Revolution. Now, these were the certain idea students that were put forward by these Enlightenment thinkers, such as Voltaire, who had given the idea of creativity and freedom of expression, which is something that was absolutely new for the people belonging to Third Estate. He suggested that new forces should be promoted and that the church system should be done away with. Apart from the students, there was another important Enlightenment thinker, that is Montesquieu, who had given the very important idea of welfare state, that is, the state is responsible for the welfare of all of its citizens. And also he suggested that there should be separation of power to achieve the goal of welfare state. So you can see here, students, that how these Enlightenment thinkers were giving very important modern ideas, giving the idea of a welfare state, the separation of powers, and doing away with the idea of monarchy in itself. Apart from the students, another important Enlightenment thinker was Rousseau, and he had given the most important ideas that are still associated with the French Revolution very dearly. That is the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity or brotherhood. And this was termed as a part of his work, that is the social contract. तो स्टूडेंट्स यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हैं कि इस तरह के आइडियाज जैसे कि फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन, वेलफेयर स्टेट, लिबर्टी, इक्वालिटी, फ्रेटर्निटी, इस तरह के आइडियाज सोसाइटी के अंदर चल रहे थे, जो कि थर्ड एस्टेट को खास करके बहुत ज्यादा अपनी तरफ इंस्पायर कर रहे थे. एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे वांटेड अ चेंज इन देयर करंट स्टेटस, एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे रोज इन रिबेलियन अगेंस्ट द किंग लुई द 16th, व्हिच अल्टीमेटली बिकेम द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन. तो स्टूडेंट्स, यहां तक हमने सारे रीजंस बिहाइंड द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन को समझ लिया है. Herein, I would like to point out one more point, students. There was one important trend that was emerging before the actual course of French Revolution. That is, the artists during the French Revolution had used a certain female allegory to portray the ideas of liberty, justice, and republic. इसका मतलब ये होता है कि कोई पर्टिकुलर पोर्ट्रेचर्स या एक पेंटिंग या कोई डेटी के टाइप में एसोसिएट करके लिबर्टी, जस्टिस और रिपब्लिक को दर्शाया जा रहा था अपनी पेंटिंग्स के अंदर. And these female allegories in turn were representing the idea of the nation in the 19th century. And this idea of nation and nationalism is something that again became a very important idea in the modern times. And that is why French Revolution and what it gave to the entire world is very, very important. Now, students, as I've already told you, these ideas were represented through specific objects and these symbols to mobilize the masses and create a sense of collective identity among the French people. इस पर्टिकुलर स्लाइड से स्टूडेंट्स जो हमारा टेक अवे होना चाहिए वो ये होना चाहिए कि the idea of a modern state, the idea of nationalism is something that emerged as a part of the French Revolution, which later inspired many colonial countries, many colonies, etc. All right. So students, with this, we have understood the entire reasons that were a part of starting the French Revolution in the first place. Now, students, we are going to talk about the course of the French Revolution. It is a little bit lengthy, so I'm going to point out only the important points and the rest are presented on the screen, which you can see later. Now, students, as I've told you, your NCERT is very important with respect to this particular chapter. This particular box has been taken from your NCERT itself. It can also serve as a revision point for you guys, wherein all the important years and the important events with respect to the course of the French Revolution have been mentioned. Now, students, we are going to begin with the course of French Revolution. Now, as I've already told you, due to the unfortunate not a happy ruling of King Louis XVI, there was a lot of financial burden on France. Apart from this, France, as I've already told you, was also involved in the 7-year wars along with the American Revolution, which had led to huge burden on the exchequer, causing a financial burden for the entire country. Now, because of this, students, in 1789, King Louis XVI decided to take certain measures and he in turn called a meeting of the Estates General. Estates General के अंदर तीनों estates आते हैं, इसके अंदर तीनों estates का representation होता है, ठीक है, और इसकी एक मीटिंग किंग लुई द 16th ने बुलाई जिससे कि जो ये फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम चल रही है उसको सॉल्व किया जा सके. Now, this particular Estates General was the old feudal assembly of the 3 estates, that is the clergy, the nobility, and the 3rd estate. And under this particular meeting, King Louis XVI wanted to get consent for additional funds. अभी यहाँ पर एडिशनल फंड्स का मतलब क्या होता है स्टूडेंट्स, जो भी फंड्स रेज होंगे उसका टैक्स बर्डन अल्टीमेटली किस पर जाएगा, थर्ड एस्टेट के ऊपर जाएगा. तो फर्स्ट एस्टेट और सेकंड एस्टेट को तो कोई इश्यू ही नहीं होता, वो फंड्स इजीली रेज कर लेंगे, पर जो बर्डन आएगा वो थर्ड एस्टेट के ऊपर आएगा. एंड दैट इज व्हाई ड्यू टू दिस पर्टिकुलर रीजन द थर्ड एस्टेट representatives opposed this additional funding because they were the ones who were the only taxpayers and would have to bear the tax burden. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that although the third estate was given a representation in the assembly, however, as I've told you in the previous slides, the third estate was the majority of the population in France, but their vote was equalized with the rest of the 2 estates. यानी कि अगर एक वोट क्लर्जी का है तो एक वोट नोबिलिटी का है और उतना ही वोट third estate का भी माना जाएगा, despite the fact that most of the population was a part of the third estate. And it is one of the major reasons why the third estate again was infuriated and later rose into rebellion. All right. Now, students, it will be important to note that due to these differences, particularly in the estate meeting, the people of the third estate were extremely infuriated and the debates among them reached to a dead end. And finally, the third estate representatives declared themselves the National Assembly, which was an assembly of the people rather than the assembly of the estates. Okay. So students, as you have seen that there were certain problems, particularly financial problems that were happening in France, and King Louis XVI was unable to solve them in a proper manner, because of which the third estate became very infuriated and they decided to create their very own institution, that is the National Assembly, which was representing the people and not the third estate. All right. Now, the goal of this particular National Assembly was to draw up a constitution for France in which the third estate could also have voting rights. By this, we mean that all the people had equal representation in France, and that is why they wanted to draw up a certain constitution. Now, students, it will be important to note that after this particular decision that was taken by the third estate, the second estate particularly, that is the nobility, became very furious and they asked the monarch to take certain actions against this particular activity of third estate. Once this was happening, the king sent troops to dispel the leaders of the third estate, because of which the third estate people became very, very infuriated, and they decided to break open the Bastille prison. Now, this breaking of the Bastille prison is a very important event in the history of French Revolution, because it was a symbolic revolt against the king and it marked the de facto end to his authority. Now, as a part of the breaking of the Bastille prison, the inmates were freed by the third estate people, and they also took control of the arms and ammunitions that were stored in the prison. तो आप देखेंगे कि इस एस्टेट मीटिंग के फेलियर के बाद तुरंत ही थर्ड एस्टेट ने अपनी एक नेशनल असेंबली बनाई, एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बनाने का उन्होंने डिसीजन लिया, और उन्होंने फिर ब्रेकिंग ऑफ बैस्टिल वाला इवेंट को अंजाम दिया इन 1789, जिससे बहुत ही क्लियर कट ये समझ में आ गया था कि थर्ड एस्टेट अब फर्स्ट एस्टेट और सेकंड एस्टेट के टॉर्चर को और नहीं सहेगी, और फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन की बिगिनिंग एकदम स्टार्ट हो चुकी थी. Now, students, as I have told you that the third estate had created the National Assembly, and as a part of it, they wanted to create a certain constitution. Now, as a part of this particular constitution came a very important declaration, that is the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. So this was a part of the constitution that was created by the National Assembly, which was started by the people of the third estate. Now, students, after the Bastille event, the particular National Assembly had started legislating, and it adopted the famous document of the French Revolution, that is the Rights of Man and Citizen. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that the people of the National Assembly abolished feudalism, and they removed the Roman control on the French church and curtailed the powers of the church so as to reduce their influence in polity. तो आप देखेंगे कि कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट डिसीजंस उन्होंने लिए, जैसे कि फ्यूडलिज्म को अबॉलिश करना. फ्यूडलिज्म का मतलब स्टूडेंट्स ये होता है, फ्यूडलिज्म के अंदर कोई किंग नहीं होता, कोई उसका सब्जेक्ट नहीं होता. जो मेन इंपॉर्टेंट पावर होती है वो होती है लैंड, एंड लैंड ओनर इज द मोस्ट पावरफुल पर्सन विद रिस्पेक्ट टू फ्यूडलिज्म, हु डोमिनेट्स मोस्ट ऑफ द एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ द सोसाइटी. नाउ फ्यूडलिज्म इन इटसेल्फ इज अ वेरी बिग कॉन्सेप्ट स्टूडेंट्स, सो आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू इन वेरी शॉर्ट फॉर्मेट that feudalism is pertaining to the landowner and his rights and his dominance over the people who do not own land. Okay, so abolition of feudalism is something that happened as a part of the rights of man and citizen, and also the control of the clergy or the church on the people was something that was curtailed. Now, students, as a part of the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, some important ideas was enlisted. Again, students, I have taken one particular screenshot from a 9th class NCERT, which is telling you in detail that what were the points that were included in the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So you can go through them. Apart from this, some important ideas that were enlisted included that all men were born free and equal. Apart from this, there were certain other important ideas that were highlighted, such as the idea of the modern nation, that is, nation is the sum of the people residing in a territory and not the territory itself. Apart from the students, the idea of freedom of speech and press is something that was highlighted in this particular charter, and also there was right to private property unless the public welfare necessities were infringing with this right. तो यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हैं कि ये जो पर्टिकुलर आइडियाज हैं जो इस चार्टर के अंदर डिक्लेयर किए गए हैं, इनको अगर आज आप मॉडर्न आइडियाज से कंपेयर करेंगे तो इनकी रेलेवेंस आपको आज भी महसूस होगी, एंड दैट इज व्हाई दीज पर्टिकुलर डिक्लेरेशंस आर वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम अ हिस्टोरिकल स्टैंड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. ऑलराइट, सो स्टूडेंट्स, अभी तक हम अपने फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन के कोर्स में ये समझ चुके हैं कि कैसे नेशनल असेंबली बनी, कैसे बैस्टिल प्रिजन को तोड़ा गया, और कैसे एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कम अप करी गई जिसके अंदर डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ मैन एंड राइट्स के बारे में बताया गया. Now, students, we will talk about that what happened once this National Assembly and the Constitution was established. Now, students, after the takeover of the National Assembly, there were certain problems that arose again in the political system of France. Now, what were these? There were certain economic situations that were faced by France. Apart from this, there was poverty, which was still persisting, and this in turn led to a split in the National Assembly, which was divided into three categories, that is the moderates, the radicals, and the conservatives. तो स्टूडेंट्स अगर आप देखेंगे तो यहाँ पे नेशनल असेंबली बनने के बाद में दोबारा से कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स अराइज होने लगी। इन प्रॉब्लम्स की वजह से नेशनल असेंबली के अंदर ही लोगों में आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंसेस हो गए, जिसकी वजह से वो 3 डिफरेंट आइडियोलॉजीज में टूट गए, that is the moderates, the radicals and the conservatives. Apart from the students, there was another phenomena that was happening at this particular point of time, which included that there was rise of 2 extreme groups apart from these moderates, radicals and conservatives of the National Assembly, and these were known as the emigres and the sans-culottes. All right. Now, who were the emigres, students? The emigres were the erstwhile nobility or the second estate who had fled France and wanted to restore the old order. यानी कि स्टूडेंट्स एमिग्रे के अंदर वो नोबिलिटी थी, यानी कि सेकेंड एस्टेट थी, जिन्होंने ब्रेकिंग ऑफ बैस्टील और नेशनल असेंबली बनने के बाद फ्रांस को छोड़ दिया था और दूसरी कंट्रीज के साथ जाके वो स्कीमिंग कर रहे थे या फिर कुछ प्लान्स बना रहे थे जिससे वो फ्रांस के पुराने ऑर्डर को वापस ला सके, जिसमें कि उनके हाथ में बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट पावर थी. Apart from the students, there was another important extreme group, that is the sans-culottes. Now, who were these? They were the most radicals among the people. Particularly, they were the peasants, workers, and the workers who were the part of a revolutionary army. तो आप देखेंगे कि नेशनल असेंबली के अलावा भी कुछ और एक्सट्रीम एलिमेंट्स बन रहे थे जिनकी आइडियोलॉजी एक दूसरे से अलग थी, बट दोनों ही कुछ पर्टिकुलर एम्स को अचीव करना चाह रहे थे. Now, students, apart from these 2 categories, there was third category that was also functioning in France at the time of French Revolution. Now, what was this? This were the underground political clubs. Now, what were these underground political clubs? The important ones were the Jacobians and the Cordeliers, who had emerged during the course of French Revolution. And they were also working towards establishing the order of the people who had formerly belonged to the third estate. Now, students, as I had told you, emigre was one extreme group who was particularly comprising of the second estate or the nobility, who were trying to scheme with other countries in order to restore the old political order wherein they had the more power. Okay, so emigre connived with the nearby countries such as Austria and Prussia, and thus in turn Austria declared the Declaration of Pillnitz in 1791, wherein they had asked the France to restore monarchy. However, students, in response of this, France declared war. Okay, तो यहाँ पर हम देखेंगे कि एमिग्रे यानी कि नोबिलिटी जो थी वो बहुत ज्यादा अपनी पुरानी लाइफस्टाइल को याद कर रहे थे, उन्हें वो वापस चाहिए थी, इसलिए उन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा स्कीमिंग की, पर्टिकुलरली ऑस्ट्रिया और प्रशिया के साथ, जिसकी वजह से 1791 में ऑस्ट्रिया ने फ्रांस को बोला कि तुम्हें अपनी मोनार्की दोबारा रिस्टोर करनी होगी. लेकिन फ्रांस, जो कि अब नेशनल असेंबली के द्वारा डोमिनेट किया जा रहा था, उन्होंने ऑस्ट्रिया के ऊपर वॉर डिक्लेयर कर दिया. Alright. Now, as a part of this, it will be important to note that there was a situation of political turmoil in France, and because of this, the Legislative Assembly, which was also known as the National Assembly, was dissolved. Okay. तो नेशनल असेंबली जो हमने देखा था, जो एस्टेट मीटिंग के बाद में बनी थी, ओके, जो थर्ड एस्टेट के लोगों ने बनाई थी, द असेंबली ऑफ द पीपल, दिस वाज डिसॉल्व्ड पर्टिकुलरली आफ्टर द वॉलेटाइल सिचुएशन इन फ्रांस wherein Austria and France were at war. Apart from the students, it will also be important to note that the monarchy, which was partially present during the time of National Assembly, was also scrapped in totality. And in fact, a new body, that is the National Convention, was formed in 1792. अब ये नेशनल कन्वेंशन जो 1792 में बनी थी, ये भी दोबारा बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट थी, क्योंकि इसने एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट आगे रखा था, दैट इज फ्रांस इज नाउ अ रिपब्लिक. By republic, students, we mean something that is governed by the citizens, wherein all the citizens are considered equal in nature. And this is something that can also be related to the idea of right to vote for all. All right. तो नेशनल असेंबली को नेशनल कन्वेंशन ने रिप्लेस कर दिया था 1792 में, और मोनार्की जो कि पार्शियली एग्जिस्ट कर रही थी नेशनल असेंबली के साथ साइड बाय साइड, वो भी कंप्लीटली खत्म हो गई थी, एंड फ्रांस नाउ बिकेम अ रिपब्लिक कंट्री. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that France also emerged victorious in the wars against Austria and Prussia, And guided by the Jacobean radicals, Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette were guillotined. Okay, तो जो हमारे मोनार्क थे लुइस 16 और मैरी एंटोनेट, इन दोनों को भी मार दिया गया था, जो कि गाइडेड था बाय द जैकोबियन रेडिकल्स. जैकोबियन, आई हैड टोल्ड यू, वाज एन अंडरग्राउंड पॉलिटिकल ग्रुप that was functioning during the time of French Revolution. And also, students, the war that was declared by Austria and Prussia on France was something in which France had emerged as victorious. All right. So these were certain events that had happened after there was a political turmoil, once the National Assembly was unable to handle the situation of France. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that a very important achievement was done by the Jacobians, which was the abolition of slavery in French colonies. Herein, it will be important to note that there was a convention in 1794 which legislated to free all the slaves in the French overseas possessions. तो ये एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट अचीवमेंट रहा था. जैकोबियन, जो कि एक अंडरग्राउंड पॉलिटिकल क्लब था, जो बाद में बहुत ही ज्यादा पावर के अंदर आ गया था, तो उनकी रेजिम के अंदर पर्टिकुलरली एक बहुत ही बड़ा अचीवमेंट हुआ था, दैट इज द अबॉलिशन ऑफ स्लेवरी. Particularly the convention of 1794 is important because इस टाइम पे फ्रेंच के सारे ओवरसीज पोजेशंस में भी स्लेवरी को खत्म कर दिया गया था, और ये एक ऐसा अचीवमेंट था जो फर्दर अदर कंट्रीज के लिए भी बहुत बड़ी इंस्पिरेशन बना और एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट स्टैंड पॉइंट बना मॉडर्न आइडियल्स के कंसर्न में. ऑलराइट, नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, हमने समझ लिया है कि कैसे नेशनल असेंबली खत्म हुई, कैसे मोनार्की खत्म हुई और कैसे नेशनल कन्वेंशन पावर में आई. नेशनल कन्वेंशन पावर में आई, उसी के साइड बाय साइड कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट रेडिकल ग्रुप सच एज द जैकोबियंस भी पावर के अंदर आए और उनके अंदर क्या इंपॉर्टेंट अचीवमेंट्स हुए. नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, अभी तक मैंने आपको बताया कि जैकोबियंस धीरे धीरे पावर के अंदर आ गए थे एंड उनके टाइम के अंदर एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट हुआ था, दैट इज द रेन ऑफ टेरर. As I've told you, Jacobians were particularly the peasants, and they were very radical in nature, and they were absolutely promoting the idea of France being a republic. That is, the power should be concentrated in the hands of all the people and not in the hands of a few people. And that is why, in order to ascertain these particular ideals, once they came into power, a reign of terror was unleashed in France. Now, the time period of this reign of terror was 1793 to 1794. And herein, the important person was Robespierre, who was the main leader of this reign of terror. And he was also the founder of the Jacobin Club. Now, Robespierre, students, had followed a policy of severe control and punishment, wherein he used to punish all the people whom he saw as the enemies of Republic. As a part of this, all the people who were seen as the enemies of Republic were arrested, imprisoned, and then they were tried by a revolutionary tribunal. And ultimately, if they were found guilty, they were killed. Now, because of this, students, many people, in fact, many followers of Jacobian Club or the followers of Robespierre itself started becoming indifferent to the ideals of Robespierre, since he was unleashing a lot of terror on the citizens of France. And due to these certain ideological differences, Robespierre was ultimately executed in 1794. And thus the revolution or the reign of terror that was started under Robespierre, particularly the Jacobean Club, was ended in 1794. All right. Now, students, we are going to talk about the next important aspect, in fact, the final aspect of the course of French Revolution. यहाँ तक हमने देख लिया स्टूडेंट्स की मोनार्की को कैसे डिक्लाइन हुआ, नेशनल असेंबली का कैसे डिक्लाइन हुआ, नेशनल कन्वेंशन कैसे पावर में आए, जैकोबियंस कैसे पावर में आए और फिर उनकी पावर कैसे खत्म हो गई. ये सारी बातें समझने के बाद स्टूडेंट्स, जैसे ही जैकोबियन क्लब की पावर खत्म हुई, देन इन फ्रांस अ न्यू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन वाज अगेन इंट्रोड्यूस्ड, and this particular constitution denied the vote to the non-propertied section of the society. यानी कि जो नेशनल कन्वेंशन और जैकोबियंस के आइडियल्स थे, that is the right of vote to all the people, is something that was snatched away again once the Jacobean period declined and a new constitution was formulated, wherein जिन लोगों के पास अपनी खुद की लैंड या अपनी खुद की प्रॉपर्टी नहीं थी, उनको राइट टू वोट डिनायल हो गया था, वो अब वोट नहीं कर सकते थे. Now, students, as a part of this particular new constitution, you must know that it provided for 2 elected legislative councils, and these elective legislative councils then appointed a directory and an executive made up of 5 members. However, students, herein it will be important to note that these executives or the 5 members who were a part of the directory often clashed with each other due to ideological differences, and this in turn created political instability in France. Now, because of this, there was a rise of a new military dictator, that is Napoleon Bonaparte, and this again gave rise to the vicious circle wherein France again became a part of the monarchy. All right. So students, this was the course of the French Revolution. हमने समझा कि कैसे थर्ड एस्टेट ने पहले नेशनल असेंबली बनाई, ब्रेकिंग ऑफ बैस्टिल हुई, लेकिन फिर सर्टेन इकोनॉमिक प्रॉब्लम्स आने की वजह से नए नए ग्रुप्स इमर्ज हुए, जिसकी वजह से बाद में नेशनल कॉन्फेडरेशन बनी, जैकोबियंस पावर में आए और फ्रांस फिर रिपब्लिक बन गया यानी कि राइट टू वोट सबके लिए हो गया था। लेकिन स्टूडेंट्स, एक पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम के बाद जैकोबियंस की भी पावर डिक्लाइन हुई, उनके जो लीडर थे दैट इज रॉबेस्पियर, उनको एग्जीक्यूट कर दिया गया, जिसके बाद में फ्रांस में दोबारा एक नई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आई जिसमें से राइट टू वोट फॉर ऑल छीन लिया गया, और ये अब उन्हीं के हाथ में था जिनके पास प्रॉपर्टी थी। इसके अलावा स्टूडेंट्स, एक नई डायरेक्टरी सेटअप की गई जिसके अंदर जो 5 एग्जीक्यूटिव मेंबर थे उनमें आपस में बहुत ज्यादा आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंसेस होते थे, जिसकी वजह से पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी हुई, which ultimately paved way for a rise of new military dictator, that is Napoleon Bonaparte, and ultimately France again came into the shackles of monarchy or a military dictator. So students, with this we have understood the entire course of French Revolution. Now we are going to quickly talk about the impact of French Revolution. All right, the impact of French Revolution on the world and the impact of French Revolution on modern ideas. Now, students, as I've already told you that during the course of French Revolution, there were certain Enlightenment ideas that were there prevalent in the society, such as the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which had inspired the French Revolution, wherein all citizens were promised individual freedom, equality in status, and brotherhood. Now, students, such kind of liberal ideas is something that not only inspired the people of France, but they were something that were also inspiring the people who were under the shackles of colonial powers. And that is why such kind of ideals are very important from the ideas of modern thinking. Okay. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that the French Revolution inspired movements against colonialism, wherein in the colonies around the world, there were movements for democracy and self-rule, which rose in the whole of Europe. अगर आप इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल को भी पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें भी बहुत सारे जो हमारे नेशनल लीडर्स थे वो लुक अपॉन करते थे फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन को, उसके आइडियल्स को उन्होंने बहुत ही अच्छे से हमारे नेशनल मूवमेंट में कैरेक्टराइज किया, उसको इम्बाइब किया, जहां पे हमारे जो इंडियन सिटीजन्स थे वो भी अपने लिए लिबर्टी, इक्वालिटी और फ्रेटर्निटी चाहते थे. And that is why students, these particular ideas were very, very important because they had inspired many colonial countries to move away from the shackles of these dominant powers. Apart from the students, it will be important to note that the wars with France weakened the European colonial powers, particularly Spain and Portugal, and their colonies in South and Central America declared themselves as independent republic. तो आप देखेंगे क्योंकि फ्रांस और अदर यूरोपियन पावर्स कॉन्स्टेंटली एक स्ट्रगल ऑफ पावर में रहती थी, उसकी वजह से जो पावर्स फ्रांस से हार गई उनकी कॉलोनीज को एक अच्छा मौका मिला जिसमें वो लोग फ्री हो गए और उन्होंने अपने इंडिपेंडेंट रिपब्लिक बना लिए. Now, students, apart from this, another important impact that was put forward by the French Revolution was the idea or the abolition of slavery after the French Revolution, which was the first move against the repressive system. Apart from the students, as I've already told you, many countries after France also followed similar ideas, wherein Britain followed this particular suit in 1833, while the USA banned slavery in 1865. तो ये कुछ ऐसे नोबल आइडियाज थे जो फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री के फोर फ्रंट पे लेके आया था, जिसको धीरे धीरे बाद में बहुत सारी बड़ी बड़ी कंट्रीज ने फॉलो किया. Apart from the students, the French Revolution led to the destruction of feudalism in France, wherein all the laws of the old feudal regime were repealed and the lands of the nobles and church were confiscated and redistributed. यानी कि मैंने आपको बताया था फ्यूडलिज्म के अंदर पावरफुल वो होता है जिसके पास लैंड होती है और लैंड नॉर्मली क्लर्जी और नोबिलिटी के पास ही होती थी. इस सिस्टम को फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन के बाद खत्म कर दिया गया और जो लैंड थी वो लोगों में रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करी गई, जिसकी वजह से वहां का इकोनॉमिक और सोशल सेटअप बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से बदल गया. Apart from the students, the Jacobean constitution, which although never came into effect, was one of the first genuinely written democratic constitution, as it gave the right to vote for all and also even the right to insurrection, which implies the right to revolt or rise against the government. तो आप देखेंगे जो जैकोबियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन थी जो कि बहुत ही ज्यादा एम्फोसाइज करी थी कि फ्रांस एक रिपब्लिक कंट्री होनी चाहिए, ये बहुत ही नोबल आइडियाज थे स्टूडेंट्स, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारी कंट्रीज जो बाद में कॉलोनियल पावर से फ्री हुई थी, इन आइडियाज को उन्होंने भी अपनी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में इम्बाइब किया है. दैट इज राइट टू वोट फॉर एवरी सिटीजन एंड इन फैक्ट दे इवन गिव अप द नोबल आइडियाज ऑफ इंसरेक्शन, दैट इज अ सिटीजन इज अलाउड टू मूव अगेंस्ट द गवर्नमेंट इफ द पॉलिसीज आर अनफेयर और इनजस्ट. ओके. Apart from the students, ending the arbitrary royal rule, the revolution paved the way for rule by law under the constitutional order. That is, before the French Revolution, there was this particular idea that the entire power was concentrated in the hands of one single person. However, after the French Revolution, there was rule by law, that there were certain rules which will govern the entire population of the country. And this is something which again became a noble idea and was also a part of modern ideas imbibed by many other countries in their constitution. Finally, students, as I had already told you, the idea of nation state emerged as a part of the thinking of French Revolution. And these ideals were something that had again inspired many other countries who had to come out of the shackles of colonial powers, particularly India. So students, with this, we have completed our discussion on French Revolution. Now I'm going to take up some questions if you guys have any. All right, let me just see. All right, thank you so much, MK Prabhu. And I hope you join us in further lectures also. Tomorrow also, I will be giving another lecture on American Revolution. Please be there. It'll be very helpful for you. Hi, Ishdeep. Ma'am, has there been any question in history which was asked outside the syllabus? Okay, so Ishdeep, it's not that the question is asked out of the syllabus, but somehow the formulation of questions sometimes is in a manner wherein the student gets confused whether I have studied about it or not. But therein, always you need to read the question twice or thrice and you will be able to understand that what all points need to be included in any particular question. Students, I hope you are preparing properly because these days I'm not seeing people on the live sessions. Please come up with more questions. All right. So I believe I have answered all your questions, students. In case you have any more doubts, please put them in the comment section and I will answer them one by one. Apart from the students, if you like our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon so that you will be updated whenever any new important video pertaining to UPSC is coming up. Thank you so much. See you again tomorrow.